This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, here we go. Parshas NASO. Couple of preliminary things. Last week's share, for whoever was looking for it, did technical difficulties. It didn't go up. Okay, what we're going to do today is we're going to build on last week's share, so we're going to do a slight review. And we're going to then look at the 7 topics in this week's Parsha. Alrighty, the 7 topics. And we are going to show the flow between them. And we're going to dig deeper and look at the inner meaning of these topics, obviously. There's always inner meaning. And what we're being told here. So let's review. Last week we talked about Har Sinai, and although this is Parshas NASO, it's a second Parsha in Sefer Bamidbar. The entire Sefer Bamidbar was meant to be this Sefer that deals with the last few details necessary to prepare Am Yisrael to move forward right now in Torah Tishol. Don't forget what happened. They got the Torah. The whole Sefer Vayikra is about Tumah and Tara. How to remember what we say Tameh and Tahar means? What is Tameh? Atum. We're going to see that word again in this week's topics. What is Tameh? Atum. Atum. Blocked. Okay, opaque. You can't see through it, as in our curtain, right? Now, what is Tahor? You have a clear connection, a clear vision. So all of Sefer Vayikra is to maintain, first of all, in the Mikdash, a place where you could have Tahara. You could see constant Nisim. The word of Hashem came from there. That's where Moshe heard the Nevuahs from. That's where you went to see what you were really part of, and to be reinforced, and to draw a strength for our mission, which is, that which is that Hashem, as we said, has given us the Torah, given us the world, how it runs, and how to achieve the tachlis, and how to expedite it. It's all in our hands. That's called giving us the Torah. Okay. So now Parsha Sefer Bamidbar is all about what should have been just the last few issues preceding going into Torah. However, we'll see in a couple of Parshios, and you should be familiar with this, that things start to unravel a little bit, and one problem leads to the next, and we end up in the Midbar for 40 years. But that hasn't happened yet. So this week's Parsha has the 7 topics, okay, as you see on top of the sheet. Let's give background. The main theme of last week, I'll still try to post it, was that Kores Bris means you give something of yourself that you need to survive, that's integral to you, to someone else, and vice versa. What Hashem gave us was His, so to speak, His future. Not His ultimate future, but in this Bria, in this creation, the covenant of Hashem, and how we use the physical world to display that's what Hashem gave us, and how we get to the Tachlis, and so to speak, Hashem's future to be known in this world, to have a Malakol Eretz Deis Hashem. It's in our hands, and that's the bris. And our side of the bris is Mesiras Nefesh, dying al Kiddush Hashem if necessary, living al Kiddush Hashem. Now, that being the case, how to keep this in mind on a regular basis. That's what all the subjects of this Parsha are about on a deeper level. How to keep in mind who we are bonded to, who we have a bris with, who we've committed ourselves to, but more than we've committed ourselves to. That's not even the essence of it. It's who has committed themselves to us. Remember that? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is there one more? That, we'll find you here. There's a sheet. So who Hashem has committed Himself to. Alrighty? So, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has created a situation where we said He is beholden to us. That being the case, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, like we said last week, we use words stuck, trapped, not really in a negative way, that Hashem can't be seen and known and respected in the world other than through us. So if we're in Galus, Hashem is in Galus, and when Hashem brings us out of Galus, He Himself will come out of Galus, and that's the guarantee that we will get out of Galus. And we quoted the first pasuk in Shmona, the first bracha in Shmona Esrei, and we're going to go back to that because we're going to find more words in there now that relate to what we're doing. So we said, Umevi goel lebnei bneihem. He brings redemption, geula, to the grandchildren of the avos. Right? We talked about why the avos. Leman shemo bi'ahava, for his name's sake, out of love. Which one? He has to bring a geula for his own name to finally lift the curtain, or is he doing it for Am Yisrael because he loves us and it's been enough time already? The answer is the greatest act of love that Hashem could bestow upon us is that he linked his name to ours and therefore must bring a geula, because only through the great story, the great miraculous story of Am Yisrael will HaKadosh Baruch Hu be appreciated in this world. It's got to come through us, right? So that was a basic summary. Now, what happens here? Look at the topics. First of all, there's a census, not a consensus. Oh yeah, census. A census of the Levium, the three families of the Levium, Gershon, Kasam, Merari, and a designation of what their roles are. They transport the Mishkan. So the Levium, okay, are responsible for doing a lot of hard work and making sure the Mishkan always is with us at all times. So first of all, that guarantee a family designated to ensuring that the Mishkan and what it can do for us, which is bring that clarity to us, keep it in our midst, that's number one, their jobs. Critical, Kedusha, Tahara, the capacity to keep our eye on the ball, in our midst at all times, traveling with us no matter where we go, people taking responsibility for that. And we're not going to spend too much time on that, but you can already see that, how this fits in. Separating out the Tameh from the camp. There's a few psukim here where those that are still tamei have to be moved to the back of the camp until they're tahar outside the camp, and then they can join. It's the markation of Tumah and Tara. Always, we don't live anymore with real, other than Nida, we don't live with a constant focus on Tumah and Tara. But Am Yisrael did. And it was a lot of laws and a lot of details. And it was a very important part of a person's sense of identity, like, what am I tamei or am I tahar right now? Because we always were keeping tabs, taking our temperature, our spiritual temperature constantly. Am I in a state of tumah where it's easier to just drift off and end up in my own little bubble here, forgetting everything I saw and everything I know and just living for my own interests? Or do I remember who I am? It's constant awareness of Tumah and Tara. But we're going to start focusing is on 3, 4, 5, and 6. Gezel Hager, Sota, Nazir, and Birchas Kohanim. Gezel Hager. Okay, here's where we go. Gezel Hager is a topic. We've spoken about it in the past, but it bears repeating. It is the following issue. Person steals money, and they have to pay it back. And they have to pay back plus a fifth. However, what if it happens that the person they stole from happens to be a ger, and that person dies? So normally you return to the family, the closest of kin, but a ger has no halachic family. So who do you return the money to? You bring it to the Beis Din. That's why this whole subject is called Gezer Hager. It's basic halachos of thievery, restitution. Let's go deeper. Okay? So, everybody look in your notes. So Gezel Hager is Parshas NASO Psukim 5-8. Dabra b'nei Yisrael, isha, man or woman, ki yasu mikol chatas adam, commits any single chet ben adam lachavero. Okay, anything a person does that is a violation of their responsibility to another person. Look at the next words. These words are going to come up again and again. Lim'ol ma'al ba Hashem. Ba'ashama hanefesh ahi, and the person realizes their guilt. What is lim'ol ma'al ba'Hashem? What is a me'ila? So first of all, important to see that the pasuk is telling us that any violation ben adam lechavero is already a me'ila. That's a big word. Mem ayin. Okay. Well, the shorish is ma'al. Mem ayin lamed. Keep that in mind. Is committing a me'ila, okay, to God. Now, a me'ila is, we're going to see in a minute, a form of embezzlement. But let's keep going in the psukim. V'izvadu es chatasam, they should orally confess their sin, asherasu, that they have done. V'heishiv es hashamo barosho, v'chamisha so yosef alav, you shall make restitution of the principal amount, plus 1/5. V'nasan lasher ashamlo, and you give it to the person that you have wronged. V'im ein ish. Now this is where the Gezel Hager comes in. Okay. V'im ein la ish goel lahashiv ha'asham elav. So what if the person has no closest of kin? Who would be such a person? Probably only a non-Jew who became a Jew, who's, as we said, their family is not a halachic family. Okay? So what should happen? Ha'asham hamushav laHashem lakohen milvad kel ayil hakipurim asher yechaper bo alav. So what should the person do? How does he make restitution? He shall give it to the kohen, and this is in addition to the ayil, the ram of kapara, which is made on his behalf. Okay, so he gives it to the kohen. Now let's go deeper here. First of all, we notice that any violation is a me'ila against Hashem himself. Ben Adam l'chaveru is by definition a Ben Adam l'makom. Why is that? We've talked about this a lot. The second a person loses sight of their relationship to Hashem, they suddenly lose total perspective on the people around them. Suddenly, everybody around them is now a co-competitor, is a threat, etc. We've talked about this, is competing with it, could be a provider, somebody who might not cooperate or might get in my way, in which case, an opponent. And all the negative attitudes kick in, correct? So any type of Ben Adam l'Chavera deviation, violation like that, is by definition something's gone wrong in a person's understanding of their relationship with Hashem. More than that, a me'ila against Hashem is not just a wrong, it's a particular type of wrong. So look in Vayikra. This is from the last Sefer Vayikra 5:21. V'nefesh ki techta. If a person sins, u'ma'ala ma'al b'Hashem, and he commits some type of really embezzlement against God. Okay, how? V'ki chesh ba'amito, because he's dealing deceitfully with his friend, with amito from shoresh am, your what's the word? Your someone in your nation. How would you say that? Co-citizen of your nation. Now look at the next word. But pikadon, with a deposit. This is a case where somebody gave someone a deposit, and somebody gave them a deposit and they deny it. Okay, b'chomet yad, or a pledge, or through some sort of b'gazel, robbery, or b'oshek, defrauding. Basically, again here, a person commits a me'ila against God by defrauding their friend, by saying they never got a loan, a pikadon. Okay, this is the definition. There's also me'ila, very important. Anytime something is designated for the Beis HaMikdash, particular animal or money, and then somebody uses it for their own mundane purposes, that's a me'ila. It's taking something that belongs to someone else and denying that it belongs to them and using it for yourself. That's a me'ila. I don't know if embezzle is exactly the perfect word, but it's something that belongs to someone else or is designated to something, to the Beis HaMikdash, and using it for yourself. Okay? That is me'ila. So now, when a person steals, it says, lim'ol ma'al b'Hashem. They've taken something that belongs, first of all, to someone else, and they've used it, but there's something deeper going on here. We're going to say that what they've taken, besides for the money they've taken, okay, from another person who they claim is theirs, and there is a me'ila against God going on here. So we're taking something that belongs to Hashem, and we're using it for our own purposes without taking responsibility for that, without any right to do that. Now, we just said last week that what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us is the whole world, not just our lives, but the capacity in our lives to decide how things operate in this world and to how we're going to be the vehicles for the kavod of Hashem. That's what Hashem literally gave us, and we said He's stuck with us. So now if we take this great privilege, these great gifts we've been given, all these resources, and we just use them for ourselves, that's the ultimate me'ila against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's given us his reputation, okay, His running of the world, and we're just using it for our own purposes. Okay, now we go deeper. Rambam has the great Hilchos Tshuva. We often quote from Hilchos Tshuva, because a lot is in it, in addition to just tshuva. The opening of the Sefer quotes this pasuk, okay, NASO, Perek 5, pasuk Vav, that we just read, quotes this pasuk as the proof text to a person having to do tshuva. So, Rambam says like this, Kol mitzvah shebetorah. This is just the opening of Hilchos Tshuva, the beginning. Okay? Kol mitzvah shebetorah, ben aseh ben lo saseh, any mitzvah, positive or negative. Im avar adam al achat mehem, if a person transgresses, violates one of them, ben bizadon, ben bishgaga, okay, on purpose or negligently, not accidentally, with negligence, okay? Accident is an accident. And negligence is, I should have been more careful, I should have known. Look at his words now. Ki sheyasa tshuva, it's a taken for granted. It's going to happen. When you're going to do tshuva, v'yashav mecheto, when you're going to regret your sin, chayav lehisvados lifnei hakel baruchu, you must verbally confess before Hashem. Shenemar, as it says, and he quotes this pasuk, ish o isha, a man or a woman. Okay, let's read the pasuk again. Ish o isha, ki yasu mikol chatos ha'adam, limol mal b'Hashem, v'yashma ha'nefesh ahi. Look at the next words. V'hisvadu es chatosam. They should do vidoy, they should admit it. Zev vidoy dvarim, this is the source for the mitzvah of vidoy dvarim. Question mark, why does the Rambam choose these psukim that relate to thievery? And yes, it does have in it that the person has to confess that they stole. Why is this the source for the laws of tshuva? Can anybody think of another pasuk in the Torah that specifically says you have to do tshuva? We say it a lot on Yom Kippur. V'shavtem ad Hashem Elokeichem is a mitzvah to do tshuva. Why isn't Rambam taking a base straight out mitzvah to do tshuva instead of saying, bringing a pasuk from Gezel Hager that if you stole and you feel guilty and you want to return it, you have to admit it, and that's the source for tshuva.
It's relating the sins between man and man to the sins between men.
So, we're going to see, the Chiddushei Harim says the following. This is, he says, look at the readings of the Rosh Hashanah, the Torah readings on Rosh Hashanah. Okay? The first day of Rosh Hashanah says, V'Hashem, what are the next words? Pakad et Sarah. What did we just read in Vayikra about a me'ilah and a pikadon? What did we just read? We write, if a person does a me'ilah, they take something that's not theirs, and they appropriate it. Such as a pikadon. What is a pikadon? What's pakad? Doesn't mean remember. What is a pikadon? Somebody, what's a tafkid? Sefer Bamidbar is called Sefer Pekidim, because every shevet is designated with a tafkid. So what is a pikadon? What is a tafkid? What does it all go together? A tafkid means I am designating you for a purpose. And what's a pikadon? Same word. I'm investing in you. I'm giving you something to use to fill your tafkid. Okay? So pakad, pikadon, tafkid, think about these all together. Hashem pakad es Sarah. I'm giving you a pikadon, meaning something, an investment of something on loan, it's not yours, for you to use to do your tafkid. What is the second day's reading of Rosh Hashanah? Akedas Yitzchak. What is the connection between the two? Hashem says, okay, you did your tafkid. Let's see if you will give back your pikadon now, what I've lent to you. Okay, I've given it to you on loan, and I'm asking for it back. Okay, that's Yitzchak. A pikadon is a loan, something on loan that you can use for your tafkid. Something on loan. So good. So Leah, what we're saying here is this, based on the Chiddushim. The reason Rambam uses this pasuk, that if you took money that doesn't belong to you, and you feel guilty, and you have to then admit it and give back a fifth, and we use that for the source of all Hilchas Tshuva, he's reading into it the following. If a person has something that doesn't belong to them, a pikadon, something Hashem has lent them, their life, all their resources, everything they've been given a pikadon. And the danger is that we will act treacherously. We will do what the pasuk says. Lim'ol ma'al b'Hashem. We will say, it's mine. I'm using it for my own purposes. I really don't know what, I'm not concerned with what you have given this to me for. I know what to do with my brains. I know what to do with my creativity, my energy, my looks, my wisdom, my physical ability. I know what to do with it. I'm going to do a lot of things with it that I want to do with it, without any regard for why it was loaned to me and that it doesn't belong to me. So Rambam is saying, in terms of Hilchos Tshuva, it's just like Geneva. If Hashem has given you something, and you've appropriated it, and forgot who it actually belongs to, okay? That's a form of Geneva. You're stealing the pikadon that Hashem has given you. More than Geneva, it's a me'ilah. You've taken it for the wrong purposes. Now what's going to happen is a person's going to feel guilty. Pasuk says it. The Pasuk straight out says you're going to feel guilty. And this is the basis of all psychology right here, okay? Look at Pasuk Vav. Again, Dabro b'nei Yisrael isho isha ki yasu mikol chatas adam, any type of sin, okay? So certainly ben adam l'chaver. Limol mal b'Hashem, you're misusing, it's a me'ilah, you're misusing the pikadon that Hashem has given you. V'ashma hanefesh ahi, that person is going to feel guilty. Something's not going to feel right, just hedonism or whatever it is, or just, drive that doesn't relate to Hashem. So now Rambam is using this as the source, the proof text for all tshuva. And Rambam says, again, go back to the Rambam, Kishe yaseh tshuva, when you will do tshuva, and you will regret your sin, you must admit it. You must say, I did a me'ilah, just like in the Vayikra Pasuk says in Vayikra, I was in Limol Mal B'Hashem, it was with a pikadon that Hashem has given me, I've misused it. Now, why does Rambam say Kishe yaseh tshuva? Because tshuva means return. We will all return. Can't help that. Nobody cannot return to where we came from. Okay? The curtain will go up. That's the return to where we came from. And there, we don't want to be left, as we always speak about, in a, not just shock. That's a understatement. But with a tremendous sense of despair and disappointment and horror and remorse and frustration and embarrassment, that like, what did I do with this life Hashem gave me? Why was I so blind to what it was for? We don't want to be there. So Rambam says everyone's going to do tshuva. It's a good idea to recognize that we are committing a me'ilah before that, admit it, and get back on track. That's the Hilchos Tshuva. Does this make sense? So, again, we have the Sefer Vayikra. We have all about Tum and Tara. We have about how to keep a connection. The first thing we know is the Mishkan is going to be with us. Levium are going to take it with us wherever we go. And today, what is a Mishkan? Obviously, it's a base Knesset, a base Medrash. It's a place to go to where you can always learn and reconnect. Next thing, Gezel Hager. It's very possible you're going to, just despite all this, despite all our history, all our miracles, all the Torah, Nevi'im, all the Sfarim, despite everything, it's possible we're going to commit a Me'ilah. So what do? You give it back. Not only do you give it back, you say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's yours and I want to devote it back to you. You give it back with a fifth. It must, the neshama we get, the life force we get, the basic raw material or natural resources that are given to us have to be improved upon. They have to be developed, and you give back with a fifth more. You give back what you gave developed in your way. And that's yours, and that has your name on it. So that that comes, that clarity, that das that comes to the world has the person who cultivated it in their own way, their name on it. That's why the Torah is called Torah's Moshe. Isn't that crazy if you think about it? Why is it called Torah's Moshe? Because Moshe brought it to us not only directly as a prophet, with, using Hashem's words, but when he wasn't actually quoting Hashem's words, what was he doing? He was using his own personality to explain and to develop and to elaborate and to help people, process it. So it's called Torah's Moshe. Okay. The next subject we go into is Sota. Now we do this every year, but it bears repeating for those that don't remember and those who haven't heard it before. It is very important to understand the halachas of Sota. I wrote them here, okay, on the next page. B1, note. Sota, okay? I'm going to tell you this before we read the psukim. The halachas of Sota, again, relate to not just a woman and a man. Am Yisrael, again, what happens if we do this me'ilah? We start appropriating our life and our interests and our passions for our own interests, against all the warnings, against all the Sfarim, against all the mitzvahs and the holidays and the Shabbos and history, against everything. We still do it. What happens then? The halachas of Sota are the following. It is a very specific case. You have a husband, that's Hashem. You're going to see because the same words are used. Lim ol mal. It's a me'ilah, okay? You have a husband, that's Hashem. Okay? You have a wife who the husband is getting more and more nervous about because she is secluding herself. She's hanging around with someone who the husband doesn't trust. Okay, this is not the case where the husband trusts the other man, is an upstanding person, doesn't trust this person. He warns the woman in front of 2 certified witnesses that are not related to each other and all that, do not be alone with this man. Okay? After being warned by 2 witnesses, in front of 2 witnesses, okay, again, she goes in a very short time and secludes herself in a locked place with this particular man. There is no witnesses in that room. Nobody knows what happened in that room. It could be she was made tameh, because she's now broke the kedusha of marriage, or it could be she's not tameh. We don't know. Now, in this case, in a technical case, and you'll see it probably almost never happens. It'd be really odd for it to happen. The husband has 2 choices, the wife has 2 choices. Okay? The husband can say, look, I can't continue living with you because I don't know what happened in there. There are no witnesses, and if you slept with someone else while you're married to me, you're usher, so let's just get a divorce. That's option A. The woman can say, yes, I want a divorce, and that's the end of the whole story. Or the husband will say, I want to resume this marriage, and the woman will say, I want to resume this marriage, and then we have a problem because they can't resume the marriage with this question mark. So the woman has an option to submit herself to the sota procedure if she wants to resume the marriage after all that bad behavior and the warnings and the witnesses. If she still wants to go back and resume the marriage, then you go to the Kohen again, to the Beis HaMikdash again, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name, is a whole procedure, and they write Hashem's name, and then they erase it in water, and they mix water with dirt, and then she drinks it, and the whole thing. And there's a million halachas and details you should know about this. Sometimes because she has other merits, she did other mitzvahs, the sota water doesn't work so quickly, it works slowly. Sometimes if the guy is guilty that she sinned with, he dies too, for being with an Eish a married woman. There's a lot of laws. But the bottom line is this is a voluntary procedure that only takes place if the woman regrets her philandering and wants to resume the marriage. Now you tell me what the mashal is, the nimshal. Okay? The nimshal, this is Am Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Step. Okay, what happens if we really commit a me'ilah? Let's go into the psukim and read it pshat and deeper. Okay, Dabro b'nei Yisrael amarta lehem. Ish. Any person. Now watch this. You're going to tell me what this is referring to. Ki tiste ishto umala bo ma'al. What is the deeper meaning here? First of all, a man. If his wife acts with, what's tiste? Shtus. From here, Chazal learn, I didn't bring it down, Ein Adam Chote, a person doesn't sin, Ella, unless Nichnas Bo Ruach Shtus. Some shtuyot entered his mind. What are we talking about here? Ish. Who is an Ish? Ki tiste ishto, is Isha acts with crazy. Uma'ala bo mal. And again, she now embezzles or takes something and whatever the English word is, and uses something designated for something else, her body here, for another purpose. Okay, so who's the Ish and who's the Isha here? We've learned, this is just one level. Who in us is the Ish and the Isha? Remember? In every human being, we'll go back to the Eitz Hadas Shirim from a few years ago. In every human being, there's an Ish and an Isha. The Pasuk in Bereshis in Parakeh says, Zachar unekeva baram, Vayikra et Shemam Adam. Zachar and Nekeva, they're created, and their name is Adam. Ish and Isha, you might want to say, is mind and heart. Okay? It's the neshama and the ruach. Every human being has in them Ish and Isha. Okay? It is very mystical, by the way, caveat, that as we get closer to Mashiach and things go to the end of days, the Isha force begins to dominate. Which is, you're seeing cuckoo-ness in the world about that, and way beyond that, but it is Kabbalistic idea that the Isha force begins to dominate. Let's, for simplicity, real simplicity reasons, nobody draw any basic conclusions from this, please, because there's so much to talk about, and it is in the previous year. The Ish in us is the Neshama Seichel component, that it has the capacity to know what's right, especially for Am Yisrael. We had Nisim and Nevuah, we had Gilui Shechina, we had Matan Torah, we had a history, we have Torah, we have everything. That is the Neshama, is the capacity of a person to not only know it's true because it was revealed to us, but to want to be attached to what's true. Okay, the ruach in a person or the isha in a person is the passions. They could go any way you want. They can go to the nachash, the physical body, the brain, the physical drives of the body, the reptilian brain, or they could go to the neshama. It depends where your passions go, what you marry them to. Yetzer hara means you take your koach yetzer, your creative energy and your passion, and you link it to the needs of the temporary needs of your physical world, your gratification and ego and all that. And that becomes Yetzirah, it's not suitable. All your kochos are going in a way it's not suitable. Or Yetzer Tov, where all your kochos are going in a way that are suitable. So, if a person has an isha, a heart, disconnected from the mind, and it commits a me'ilah against them, it means the husband, so to speak. Remember Hashem said after the chet, El ishech shukasech b'hu yimshal bach, on a deeper level, it means to the isha, go let your husband, the neshama, the seichel, dominate you, and that should be what you're yearning towards. But that, towards the end of days, as things come around, think about this. When the mind knows something is true, when the neshama knows something is true, and the passions want something, who generally wins? The ish or the isha? The passions win. The passions always win over the seichel. Almost always. Not everybody, but most people. Okay, what we're working on here is how not to let that happen. How to stay loyal one to the other. Okay? So, the Isha always wins. Really, if it was your passions that wanted connection to Hashem, you would figure out with your mind a million reasons why that's good, and you would use your mind to learn and to think about spiritual things and to learn Torah and to delve into Torah. You would recruit your mind to your own interests. If your interests were connection to Hashem, then you would easily force your mind to dwell on that all the time. That's normal. Actually, what we're saying is the heart, the ruach, the isha is the power, is the engine. It's the engine that drives everything. If the ruach is in place, the mind, the seichel will do what it's supposed to do, and so will the body.
Is the seichel called the chachma or no?
It's the chachma is part of seichel, but the chachma, yes, chachma is more like that, more like the ish, yes, because it's koach ma, it's like the big picture. So the fact that the women are reasserting themselves in all of this is very mystical, as we said, because it's coming to a point where it should be, where it must be, that the drive, the yearning, the heart, the love is what drives everything else. And once that happens, things fall into place, if it's clean. But here you're still talking about a place where the Baal has an Isha that's not loyal, and she's taking her, what does she do? So here's the thing, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us everything. Okay, and we take everything Hashem gives us and we use it for our own interests, and then we go and find ways to kind of betray HaKadosh Baruch Hu with what Hashem has given us, with Hashem's air and Hashem's life and Hashem's parnas and Hashem's health. We then go using that and betray Hashem, using it all for the wrong reasons, or God forbid, even in direct violation or even in opposition. That's what we're talking about here. So now Hashem warns us many, many times, right? So what's the problem here? So she goes ahead. She's now in Yichud. V'shachav ish ota. Here are the two options, 13 and 14, the two psukim. V'shachav ish ota shechva zera v'nelam eine isha v'nistra v'nitma v'eid ein ba v'hi lo nitbisa. So this is the worst case. She does have intimate relations that her husband doesn't hidden from her husband's eyes. Okay, and she keeps it a secret that she's defiled, right? There's no witnesses. There are no witnesses, and she's not forced. So this is the worst. The worst is let's say it like this. There is a case here, halachically, if there is one witness. So she's warned, she secludes herself, she has relations, there is a witness, and it was not forced. That's it. The marriage is over. Okay. But the sota story is, she went in the room, against two witnesses warning her, in front of two witnesses. There is no aid. There's no witness at all. What happened in there? Either she's tummy or she's not tummy. We don't know. It's left in limbo. Okay? So here, look at Pasuk 14. Va'avar alav ruach kina. So he has this ruach of jealousy. V'kines ishto. And he wants his wife back. He's jealous for his wife. He did not, like it says in Aseret Divus, right? Kel Kana, Hashem he's jealous on this relationship because he made a promise in the bris that we hold everything in our hands, and he's stuck to it. So of course he can't just let us go. Now here's what Pasuk 14 says: V'hi nitma, either she's tamei, or we're talking about a case of our love ruach kina. He's very, very jealous. V'hi lo nitma, and she's not tamei. This is where sota comes in. Only in the case that she's not tamei. If she is tamei, I mean, technically if she's tamei, she could go do the process. Well, why would anyone do that? Right? So, here's a case where Kadosh Baruch Hu wants to resume the marriage with us because we have everything. He signed over everything in our name. So imagine that. Everything's in the wife's name. All right? Am Yisrael. And he doesn't, and we're drifting around to this Avodah Zarah and that Avodah Zarah and whatever else it is. Avodah Zarah is always compared to Zanus. Looking for attachment to things that don't provide for you, that you're turning to. We did a lot of talk about this, that you're turning to out of need and desperation and fear. How am I going to fill all my deficiencies? I need this, this, and that. Okay, maybe you could give it to me. Let me give you something so you could give me what I need. We're operating out of fear and fear of filling our voids because we forgot that we're already provided for by Hashem, as we learned in the bracha, right? So the whole thing is a waste of our energy. That's the truth, and we're off running around trying to be attractive to others and giving what Hashem has given us to others. And the Kadosh Baruch Hu wants us back because he signed over everything to our name anyway and promised that he's never breaking the deal. So you see that he's stuck. He's stuck here. So the husband wants this relationship, and the wife wants it too. So now she's willing to go to Sota because she knows that in the final analysis, she didn't do anything in that room. She actually didn't betray her husband. She did not. There was no intimacy. And in the final moment, she stayed loyal to her husband. This is Am Yisrael. That's why we're still here. This is why we're still here. Parts of us, not everybody. Here we are. The people that are here did not convert, did not baptize themselves, did not give up their Judaism. That's why we are here. Yeah, we're all the children of those who didn't.
It just reminds me so much of the Egel Hazah.
Yes,
punishment,
of course.
Grinding.
Same thing. The 2 times.
Swallowing.
Two. That's right. We talked about that. Remember when Hashem said? That was okay. Now here. Okay. Now. So here's we are. So we spoke here. This is the story. This is what happens. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, all right, I want you back. You want me back. We're going to go through it. I'm going to what does the erasing of Hashem in the water of the Sota mean? Hashem says, this is, and everyone talks about this, the Chilul Hashem. This is a Chilul. You take Hashem's name and you erase it, which is a symbol of what Am Yisrael is doing, which is we're making it seem as if there's no God in this world. We're just using everything Hashem gave us for our own interests with no direction, betraying Hashem, using Hashem's own resources that are here for His kavod, for our own self. And this is the ultimate, we spoke about this last week, the ultimate halal, as if there's a void, there's nothing here. Now, we are not supposed to live in a world that we feel nobody's here, just me, and hey, emena nili nili, and that's where fear and filling voids and needs and all that comes in, because we feel like we're in a world alone, and that is not, not what we're supposed to opt, or we're supposed to guard ourselves never to get into that place. Now, what happens next? Next is the Nazir, okay? The Nazir is the one who sees all this going on. He sees what could happen if a person loses sight of who they are and what could happen, and he decides this is not going to happen to me. I am going to go back overboard with midas adin, and I'm going to stay away from anything that could cause me to lose my clarity. I'm opting out of those things that can blind a person. So first thing a Nazir opts out of is wine, okay, and also beauty, lets his hair grow, self-indulgence. Now, look at the words used here, and we mentioned this too. A lot of these pieces should fit together. Darber el b'nei Yisrael u'marta lehem, isha, man or woman, ki yafli lindor neder nazir lahazir l'Hashem. If they do a pele, to make a neder of a Nazir, I'm making a vow to be a Nazir, which is a temporary thing. It's just a short-term thing, but still. It's a vow. Now, why Yafli? Remember we said about Pele? Pele, the Gra says, remember we did, Remember Asher Yatzar? Galoi v'yadua lifnei kisei kvodecha. And then we talk about the bathroom. And we say mafli lasa. What is the kisei hakava doing with our excretory system? Remember? So the Gemara explains that the word pele is that particular form of astonishment or wonder, or das, which is when two things are known to be one, two things that seem separate are known to be one. Remember that? Das? Pele is when that which is of the loftiest levels, kisei hakavod, Hashem's kavod in the world, and our bathroom habits, okay, whatever, they're the same thing. That's a Pele. They all are part of one system. Everything is designated so that Hashem could sit on the kisei hakavod. What does that mean? When a king sits, it means enthroned, secure, accepted. So for Hashem to sit on the kisei hakavod is a world that understands Hashem. So that everything's tied up. That's a Pele. The Nazir says every single thing of my physical life is part of this process, this tachlis for the kavod. I don't want to make a mistake. I'm going to stay away from anything that's going to separate my sense of physical existence and my spiritual tachlis. I'm not going to be into my beauty. I'm not going to drink. And don't forget, in the Sota, if you just go back, it says ki tiste ishto. His wife became crazy. But look at Nazir, v'lo yishte. Don't drink. Don't get into a place where you could do something because of shtus. Because you forget, you lose sight. You just like casual, carefree, as if, not thinking. So he makes a neder, this Nazir, that he's staying away. Now this brings us into another whole discussion from the Gemara. This is a famous one. Because what is Hashem going to tell us now? We're saying, you know what? It's even though I gave you everything, I signed the whole world over to your name, and I gave you all the mitzvahs, and I promised to be stuck with you, and I'm going to bring you a geula, and I gave you nisim and nevuah and gila shechina, and I did everything. The fact is, you could still be a sota, and then you create a chil Hashem, but and still it's repairable. I'll take you back. But you know what? So what do we say? We don't want this to happen. We're going to opt out. We're going to be ascetics. We're going to decline things of the physical world. Is that the derech? That is not the Jewish derech. That isn't the Jewish derech to let's take it to the extreme. We're going to go in the hill in the Himalaya or in a monastery somewhere, and we're going to decline food, accept the basics, and decline clothing, accept the basics, and possessions, and relationships, and we're going to be spiritual and just stay pure, tahar, and not risk anything. Okay, clearly it's not the Jewish way. The next topic is Berchas Kohanim. You should have everything, you should succeed with everything, you should be blessed with everything. How do you get from Nazir to Berchas Kohanim? That's the question. Where does that balance lie? Does this make sense so far? Okay, now we're going to go into famous, and this is from Rav Hutner, explains this. Rav Hutner explains it in Maimer 19 on Sukkot. There's a famous machlokas. This one about Beis Hillel and Shammai. Is it better to be created or better not to be created? Remember that one? Okay. So, what do they decide? Ultimately, so now I want you to look at the Hebrew, okay? First, they question, okay, Halal omrim noach lo adam shelo nivra, yoser misha nivra. Some say, no, it's better they were not created. But halal omrim, and then the others say, noach lo adam shenivra. It's better that he was created. Yoter misha lo nivra, even better than that they never were created. Now, look at the word underlined. Nimnu v'gamru, they counted and they concluded, Noach lo adam shelo nivra. It's better had we not been created than created, but now that we're created, be very meticulous with your actions and, watch yourself, be very careful with what you do. What does the word nimnu, they counted, mean? They counted what? Some said best not to. Some said better that we were created. Then they counted. Counted what? Vote, majority vote? They counted how many mitzvahs aseh there are, and how many mitzvahs lo aseh there are. And how many are there? How many lo asehs are there? 365. How many asehs? 248. So what's the likelihood that we're going to succeed at the 248 mitzvahs, or we're going to violate 365 isurim? So the likelihood that we can mess up is obviously greater than it is that we can succeed. So they said, you have to know that there are so many things you have to watch yourself not to not to, overstep, not to be over, that it's best had a person not be born. But now that we're born, now we're created, we should do the best. What does this mean? Is that really a Jewish attitude? Is that really a Jewish attitude? It's best not to be created? It's not at all. It's not what Koheles is about. It's not what... The whole Torah is not about this. So what it's saying is like this. Rav Hutner explains this. And this is why Nazir comes before Birchas Kohanim. I have Rav Hutner here. Basically, Pachad Yitzchak. Okay? Explains like this. Yitzchak, was fear. Yitzchak is called Gevura. Yitzchak put himself on the Akedah. All right? We as Jews, we are living off those spiritual attainments of the Avos, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Okay? Let's go back for 1 second. Avram helped us understand the idea of chesed, that we're all included in Hashem's existence. Remember that? We're already provided for. Everybody that walked by was provided for by Avram. Yitzchak then helped us attain a spiritual understanding, which is also equally powerful, equally important, called Gevura. Gevura means restraint. In which way was Yitzchak restrained? Restrained how? Yitzchak was restrained in... Physically restrained. What is Yitzchak's restraint about? Yitzchak's din or Gevura. Yitzchak understands that, there's two aspects. First, that this world isn't 100% the real world, and to live in this world, as we spoke about last week, in a way that is a repudiation, a total falsification of what we are and who we are, isn't worth living. And he restrains his desire to physically live, and he subsumes it under his desire to be connected to Hashem, and he lets himself be tied up. After the Akedah, we don't hear about Yitzchak. It says that Avram returned to his lads, but never says Yitzchak. Where's Yitzchak? The next time we hear about him is when Eliezer's coming 3 years later with the camels and with Rivka. So it says, Vayetze Yitzchak. Yitzchak comes out, L'suach, to pray. So Chazal say, Mehechan Yatza, where was he? Migan Eden Yatza. Now, it doesn't mean he wasn't alive. Doesn't mean he was alive. He was sitting on a hill somewhere. He did not want to get engaged in this physical world. He was in a state of Kedusha V'Tara, no interest in this world at all, not wanting to get trapped by it, zero. So first level of Gevura is holding back from the things of this world that trap us. But with Yitzchak, it became even more. Yitzchak had to hold back, like Nadav and Avihu, remember that? From not merging right back into Hashem's world. From not totally divesting himself of everything of this world and just staying in Gan Eden and really not engaging in the physical world. He had to hold himself back from letting go and releasing himself just to end up in a state of spiritual isolation, meditation, prayer, and that's it. That type of Gevura, which is tempting for people to do. And there's whole cultures based on it. That's what you do. You just meditate and be spiritual all day. So, Rav Hutner says that was Yitzchak. Yaakov is fully engaged in the experiences of this world 1,000%, and Yaakov is Am Yisrael as we go through Golus until we become Yisrael, right? We are fully engaged in the ins and outs of existence. So Rav Hutner says, you cannot be trusted to engage in this world, to use the things of this world, to not commit a me'ilah against Hashem, unless first you go through the stage of Yitzchak, of the Nazir, of the stage of being afraid of the dangers of this world, being afraid how easily it is to get trapped and sucked in, being very cautious about how we could fool ourselves and hijack our seichel to convince us that what we want to do, what we're doing is right. Until we go through the madreg of Nazir, of fear of how easy it is to slip, we can't really be trusted or safe with the Birchas Kohanim, with the bounty, with the shefa that Hashem bestows upon us. Until we go through Yitzchak, you cannot safe to be Yaakov. Until you go through Mutav Shalom Nivra, it's better had I not been created. You cannot say Mutav Shenivra. It's better that I am created. So they say, after you realize all the risks, now you can live, but be very careful. Always think about what you're doing. Always ask yourself questions, right? Look at Hillel and Shammai. Achshav Shenivra, now that you're created, Yifash Veish B'Masav. You should really constantly, scrutinize your actions. Okay? Amar la Hashem Yimashmash B'Masav so that and whether and always make sure that, like my grandfather says, make sure check yourself that your l'shem shemayim is still l'shem shemayim. Now we brought down here Rambam, okay, going back, pulling this whole thing together. Rambam tells us that he's so astonished by Shlomo HaMelech in Sefer Mishlei. How extraordinary is what Shlomo HaMelech says in his wisdom. He likens chomer, raw material, meaning the essence of the material world. He constantly compares it to a married harlot, a woman who's married, but she's always looking for a different husband, who is never separated from for matter is never found without form. This is Rambam speaking about chomer and tzura. Always like a woman who is never separated from a man, is never free. However, though being wedded, constantly seeks another man in the place of her husband. She entices and attracts him in every possible manner until he obtains from her what her husband used to obtain. Okay, and then he says this is the same with chomer. Rambam is saying here, the mashal for a woman who's always looking for different husbands, who's not loyal, this is the nature of existence. We have a physical existence called chomer, and it has drives. Okay, and it has a tzura, it has a form. In the Middle Ages language was substance and form, chomer and tzura. It's really guf and neshama, really material and spiritual. So we have this material world. And although we're married, we have a tzura. Like, what is a chomer and a tzura? Chomer is like a block of marble, and the tzura is the David that Michelangelo makes out of that block of marble. Okay, we have a tzura. We know what we're supposed to do with our raw material, what we're supposed to devote it to, what's supposed to come from it, why Hashem is given to us. But nevertheless, though we do, we're always looking for some other form of self-expression, some other tzura. This chomer is constantly seeking new tzuras. Now, it is possible for a person to make themselves over in many different ways. There are people that start out Litvish and then they're drawn to Hasidish, or their raw material can be fashioned in many different ways. That's a good process, a healthy process. People can do that. But all those tzuras are versions of one true tzura. But what happens is we could start looking for alternate tzuras and others ultimate identities and ways of living and ways of thinking that are and devote ourselves to them until we give them what we're supposed to be giving our husband, and they don't give anything back. That's the point. The point of a woman who strays to some other man is that other man has no commitments, has no responsibilities, doesn't do anything in return, can back out at any moment, as opposed to a Kadosh Baruch Hu who's already signed over everything into our hands and has made himself beholden for the duration of history to Am Yisrael. And that only through Am Yisrael will all the Yeshuas and Geulas come, and only then will Hashem be known. So, here we are. It's a natural struggle. Okay, this is what this whole Parsha is about. There's Tumah and Tara. Make sure we stay Tahar. Separate the Tameim. Okay, we have a Mikdash in our midst all the time. Right, then separate Tameim. Then the whole idea of Gezel Hager. What if you do a Me'ilah, start using, right, don't admit it. Then you go into Sota. Then Nazir, Berchas Kohanim. And in between, you have this idea. This is a process. We're very aware, we're very cautious. And we don't have time to do this, but hope maybe next time. This whole section in Koheles, if you read it more deeply, well, you want to do it in 5 minutes? Okay. So Koheles, which we're learning on Wednesdays by Rivka Fuchs's house, has this whole little 5-page discussion about one, a person alone versus two people together. It's better to have two people than to have one person. Okay, when you read it on the surface in the pshat, it's obviously not such a big chiddush. But of course, Shlomo Melech's not just telling us pshat; he's going deeper. So if you look at the psukim, what he's talking about here is the same struggle that we talked about in the parsha, and that is a struggle between the husband, what a person knows to be true, and their heart and their body, which has its own, could have its own separate interests, and how to keep them together, and what happens if they're not at peace with each other, and how to align them all and make a bond between them all, because it's very dangerous. So if you look quickly, he says, Yesh Echad, there's an Echad. And the Echad here, he means the one and only, the Neshama, that which knows what's right, that's what's exposed to it, that what yearns for it. But this neshama of ein sheni v'gam ben v'achein lo, but it's alone. It doesn't have a son or a brother, which means that it doesn't have a natural. It can't just recreate itself in someone else. No matter how hard you try, everyone is on their own spiritual journey. You can't just take your spiritual accomplishments and implant them in someone else. And you don't have a brother, an ally, somebody who's like you're really. Every person is a yachid, is alone. Ve'ein ketz l'chol amalo, and there's no end to the work the neshama is doing to progress. V'gam einav lo tizba, and he'll never be satisfied. No one will say, I have enough Torah, I'm good. I have enough insight, I'm good. Or enough mitzvahs, I'm done. Okay? Ulumi ani amel mechaser nafshi mitova. But the question is, I'm denying myself. The neshama can ask, or Shlomo is asking, but if this is how it's supposed to be, a neshama fighting a lonely battle and like declining all other attachments to the body, to the passion that are linked together, why am I working so hard? Where's it going to get me? How can I even ensure that this will carry on after me? And Shlomo says it breaks your spirit. A neshama fighting a lonely battle with no allies, it's very difficult. And then he compounds it and he says, Tovim hashnayim in echad, two are better than one. Okay? Asher yesh lam schar tov b'amalam, because they get a good, suitable reward. Now, the two better than one could be read two ways here. The two always are successful, could be the alliance, the natural default alliance between the body and the passions. The nachash and the isha. What the body wants very easily tells the passions that this is not just a physical desire that has to be filled. This is an important fantasy. Great things will happen if we just indulge our needs for gratification all the time, and it's valuable. And the passions, the desire gets linked up with the body's needs, and that they'll be very successful together. They will do once you get your passions hooked up to your taiva, the person's taivas, you can make billion-dollar industries out of food and clothing and beauty and fitness and indulgences of all sorts. Okay. On the other hand, you could read this pasuk a different way. If the heart links to the neshama, you get your passions, your isha, who drives the engine. That's the best way. And all they want is connection to Hashem. And then the mind will then always seek more Torah, always seek more opportunities to understand more. That's very powerful. Very powerful, and it'll be, they'll get a good schar, very suitable schar. And there's no mention here, by the way, of the body, because when the mind and the heart are aligned, the body is very, very, very obedient. In other words, when you're standing in Shul Yom Kippur, and your mind knows what a great day it is, and you want to have the holiness of Yom Kippur, the body does not lay down and have a temper tantrum that it's hungry. It just cooperates, okay? Now he goes on, V'ki im yipol ha'echad yakim es chavero. If you have this alliance, okay, one falls, the other will prop him up, okay? But if you're just alone, who's going to prop him up? So taking it two ways. If the body and the passions are linked and one starts fading, the other one will prop him up. There are billion-dollar industries in keeping our taivas going, okay? Keeping our taivas going, making sure everyone's still as young and youthful and vital as they always were, because if your body starts to fade, what should the passions do? So the passions want to be passionate, so they get the body, they artificially make the body, you know what I'm talking about, all kinds of examples, keep up with, they'll take care of each other. And if the body wants something, and the passions are a little weak, it'll find a way to drive the person crazy to inflame the passions, okay? But taking it in a good way, okay, if the neshama and the heart are united, that also works together, okay? One helps the other. Anyway, he goes into the third one. We'll skip to the fourth one. And what happens if the one, the neshama, is under pressure, is under attack? Okay, hashnayim yamdu negdo. The two will either in the positive way will stand up against him to defend him, and the chud ha'mishulash. There's a few ways to take this. Two ways, we'll do two ways. If the neshama is fighting a lonely battle and it's feeling attacked, it wants to grow, but there's too much pressure against it, you can be sure that the two, body and the passions, are stand against it, will be an opponent. They won't let the neshama grow. Many people want to take steps for the neshama to grow, and the body and the passions that are all already in their own world, they will stand up as opponents and not allow it. Don't go there. You're going to be like all those other people. You're going to lose all your friends. You're going to, okay, I'll give you examples. I know this personally. I've been told it. People want to take this step to cover their hair. Their friends, oftentimes will be the ones that will discourage them, and not just discourage them, mock them, threaten them. They'll lose all their friends. If one neshama is fighting a lonely battle, two will stand up against them. But the positive way is, if the neshama is under attack and the heart is aligned, the passions want it, but maybe the seichel doesn't understand the Holocaust. But I know I want to be close to Hashem.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.